A battleship explodes in the middle of the night. 260 American sailors are dead. Newspapers scream for revenge. And within weeks, the United States is at war. But this war was not just about one explosion. It was not just about Cuba. It was the war that changed America forever. It helped turn the United States from a growing nation into a global power. And it forced Americans to ask a difficult question. Was America still fighting for freedom? Or was America becoming an empire? This is the story of the Spanish-American War, a short war fought in 1898, but its impact lasted far beyond the battlefield. It changed Cuba, it changed Puerto Rico, it changed Guam, it changed the Philippines, and it changed the way the United States saw itself. Before this war, America was powerful, but after this war, America stepped onto the world stage, not just as a country, but as a world power. To understand the war, we have to begin in Cuba. In the 1890s, Cuba was still controlled by Spain, but many Cubans wanted independence. They wanted freedom from Spanish rule. The fight was long, painful, and violent. Spanish forces tried to crush the rebellion. Villages suffered, families were forced from their homes, farms were destroyed, and stories of suffering began reaching the United States. For many Americans, Cuba felt close, not just because it was near Florida, but because the Cuban fight for freedom sounded familiar. Americans had seen themselves as a people born from revolution. So when they heard about Cuba fighting against an empire, many felt sympathy. But sympathy was not the only reason America cared. American businesses had money invested in Cuba. The island had sugar, trade, and strategic value. And some American leaders believed the United States needed more influence overseas. They wanted a stronger navy. They wanted foreign markets. They wanted America to become more powerful. So Cuba became more than a humanitarian crisis. It became a test of America's values, and a test of America's ambition. At the same time, newspapers were shaping public opinion. In 1898, newspapers were extremely powerful. They were the way millions of Americans learned about the world. Publishers like William Randolph Hearst and Joseph Pulitzer competed for attention. They wanted big headlines, emotional stories, shocking details. This style became known as yellow journalism. Stories from Cuba were often written in a dramatic way. Spain was shown as cruel and brutal. Cuban rebels were shown as heroic freedom fighters, and every new headline pushed Americans closer to war.
Then came the moment that changed everything. On February 15th, 1898, the USS Maine was sitting in Havana Harbor. The ship had been sent to Cuba to protect American lives and property during the crisis. That night, a massive explosion ripped through the ship. The Maine sank into the harbor. 260 American sailors died. The country was shocked. People wanted answers. Many Americans quickly blamed Spain. But at the time, there was no clear proof. Still, one phrase spread across the nation, "Remember the Maine." And that phrase became a call for war. President William McKinley did not rush into war. He understood how terrible war could be. He had lived through the American Civil War. He knew that war meant death, disease, and suffering. But the pressure around him was growing. Newspapers demanded action. Congress demanded action. The public demanded action. And the situation in Cuba was getting worse. In April 1898, the United States demanded that Spain leave Cuba. Spain refused. Soon after, the United States declared war. The Spanish-American War had begun. Before the war began, America made an important promise. Congress passed the Teller Amendment. This said the United States would not annex Cuba. In simple words, America promised it was not fighting to take Cuba for itself. The war was presented as a fight for Cuban freedom. That promise mattered. It helped convince many Americans that the war was moral, that it was not about empire, that it was about helping people become free. But history would soon become more complicated, because America was about to fight Spain not only in Cuba, but across the world. Far away from Cuba, across the Pacific Ocean, Spain controlled another colony, the Philippines. And just like Cuba, the Philippines had its own independence movement. Filipino revolutionaries wanted freedom from Spain. On May 1st, American naval forces attacked the Spanish fleet in Manila Bay. The American commander was George Dewey. The battle was a stunning victory. The Spanish fleet was destroyed. America had suddenly become a major power in the Pacific, but for the Filipino people, the future was uncertain. They had fought Spain for independence. Now America had arrived, and no one knew what would happen next.
Meanwhile, American forces arrived in Cuba. The campaign was difficult from the start. The weather was hot, the roads were rough, supplies were disorganized. Disease was a serious threat. Many soldiers suffered before they even reached battle. But the American army pushed forward toward Santiago. This city was important because Spain's Caribbean fleet was trapped nearby. If America could capture the area, Spain's position in Cuba would collapse. The fighting would soon create one of the most famous stories in American military history. One of the most famous figures of the war was Theodore Roosevelt. Before the war, Roosevelt worked in the Navy Department, but when fighting began, he left his government position and joined the Army. He helped lead a volunteer cavalry unit known as the Rough Riders. The group included cowboys, athletes, college men, and adventurers. They became famous for their courage and energy. At the Battle of San Juan Heights, American forces charged uphill under enemy fire. Roosevelt's image as a fearless leader spread across the country. He became a national hero, but the full story is bigger than one man. The victory at San Juan Heights was not won by Roosevelt alone. Black soldiers, including the famous Buffalo Soldiers, played an important role in the fighting. They served with courage and skill, but their contributions were often ignored or pushed to the side. This was a common pattern in American history. Some heroes became legends, others were forgotten. The battle was hard, the danger was real, and many different soldiers helped carry the United States to victory in Cuba. After San Juan Heights, Spain's hold on Santiago became weaker. The end of the war in Cuba was getting closer. In July 1898, Spain's Caribbean fleet tried to escape from Santiago, but American naval forces were waiting. The Spanish ships were destroyed. It was a major defeat. Soon, Santiago surrendered. American forces also invaded Puerto Rico. Spain was losing on every front. Its empire was collapsing. By August, the fighting stopped. The war had lasted only a few months, but the results were enormous. Spain had been defeated, and the United States had proven that it could project power far beyond its own borders. In December 1898, Spain and the United States signed the Treaty of Paris. Spain gave up control of Cuba. Puerto Rico became a possession of the United States. Guam also became a possession of the United States, and the Philippines were transferred to American control. The United States paid Spain $20 million for the Philippines. For Spain, this was the end of a once great empire. For the United States, it was the beginning of a new era. America now controlled territory outside the continent. It had become an overseas power, but victory created a serious moral question. America had said it was fighting for freedom, but after the war, America controlled new lands and new peoples. This created a major debate at home. Supporters of expansion said America had a duty to bring order, education, and progress. They believed overseas territories would make the country stronger. They talked about trade, naval bases, and national greatness. But critics disagreed. They said empire went against American values. They asked a powerful question. How could a nation born from revolution deny independence to others? The war with Spain was over, but the argument over empire had just begun. Cuba did not become an American colony, but it did not become fully independent right away either. After Spain left, the United States occupied Cuba. Then in 1901, America required Cuba to accept the Platt Amendment. This amendment limited Cuba's freedom. It gave the United States the right to intervene in Cuban affairs. It also helped secure an American naval base at Guantanamo Bay. So America kept its promise not to annex Cuba, But Cuba's independence came with conditions. For many Cubans, freedom came under the shadow of American power. The situation in the Philippines became even more painful. Filipino revolutionaries believed they had earned independence. They had fought against Spain. They had declared their own government. But the United States did not recognize their independence. In 1899, fighting broke out between American forces and Filipino nationalists. This became the Philippine-American War. It was longer and bloodier than the Spanish-American War. American soldiers who had arrived as enemies of Spain were now fighting people who also wanted freedom. The contradiction was impossible to ignore. America had defeated an empire, then it became the ruler of another people. One of the main Filipino leaders was Emilio Aguinaldo. He had led the fight for independence from Spain. Now he led resistance against American rule. The war became difficult and brutal. Filipino fighters used guerrilla tactics. American forces responded with harsh measures. Civilians suffered. Villages were caught in the violence. In 1901, Aguinaldo was captured by American forces. His capture weakened the resistance, but it did not erase the bigger question. Had America come to the Philippines as a liberator or as a new empire? The Spanish-American War was short, but it changed the United States forever. Before 1898, America was mostly focused on its own continent. After 1898, America had power in the Caribbean and the Pacific. It had Puerto Rico. It had Guam. It had influence over Cuba. It controlled the Philippines. It had a stronger navy. And it had a new role in world affairs. The war also made Theodore Roosevelt famous. His reputation from the war helped him rise in politics. A few years later, he would become President of the United States. The Spanish-American War began with an explosion in Havana Harbor, but it ended with something much bigger than revenge. It ended with America holding power far beyond its shores. For some people, 1898 was the moment the United States became a world leader. For others, it was the moment America crossed a line. From opposing empire to practicing it, that is why this war still matters. It was not just a war against Spain. It was a turning point in the American story. A moment when the United States looked outward, saw the world, and decided it wanted a place at the center of it. But power always comes with a question. Not just, can we use it? But what kind of nation do we become when we do? The Spanish-American War was brief, but its consequences shaped the next century of American history. And in many ways, the questions it raised are still with us today.